Today I'm going to be showing you some of the favourite elements that I include in naming ceremonies. Hi folks, I'm Paul by the way from Stand By Me Ceremonies. I'm a professional naming and couples celebrant living in Manchester. Modern naming ceremonies are a really lovely way to introduce your child into the family by celebrating their name. It can be done at any age, but most commonly they're done when a child's between the age of 6 months and 18 months. So what is a naming ceremony? A naming ceremony is a celebration of the child's name, as well as celebrating the relationship of that child with the parents, the grandparents, the extended family, and anybody else that you want to be involved. This is typically a non-religious ceremony where it focuses on the relationship of the child with the people around them, which is in contrast to a religious ceremony like a christening or a baptism that focuses more on the relationship of the child with the religion or with the God. In a naming ceremony, you can include what we call symbolic actions to try and involve different people in the ceremony. They're very visual, very memorable, and they have some sort of meaning to them that you can attach. The format of a naming ceremony goes something like this. So 1, you actually introduce the idea of a naming ceremony, explain what it is, and explain what the format is going to be to all of the guests who have come. 2, you introduce the parents with the child into the space, and then you tell everybody what the baby's name is. 3, the parents state their promises and aspirations for their child. 4, you have the grandparents' involvement, that again could be promises and aspirations. 5, you have what we'd call the guide parents or mentors and their involvement in the ceremony. And then 6, finally, let's finish it off and let's celebrate. So that was just a rough guide with lots of room for manoeuvre really. You can include readings, symbolic actions, other creative elements in between each of those stages, but that's the basic plan for what you might want to do. So now I'm going to take you through some of my favourite symbolic actions and elements that you can include. I'm going to do 5. 1, a sand blending ceremony. A sand blending ceremony is a really visual symbolic action which can include quite a few different people in the process. So the basic structure of it is that each person involved will have a container similar to this, filled with a different coloured sand, and then they blend them into a central container, something like this, and that becomes a bit of a keepsake after the event. The words that I would say during the sand blending ceremony are really important to tie it together with why we're there. The idea is once the sand is mixed together, the grains can never be separated. This represents the togetherness of the family around the child, so it could go something like this. Just as these grains of sand have been combined and cannot be separated, the lives of baby and her family will be united together forever. 2, a candle lighting ceremony. Lighting candles is quite a typical thing to do in a naming ceremony because of all the symbolism that you can use with the burning flame. I really like to add to this idea with a multi-wick candle, something that's easy to buy these days. This idea works really well with, say, the guide parents or the grandparents, a nice way of including them in the ceremony. So here's an example of one that I've bought that's got 3 wicks that I'm actually going to use in a few weeks for my own first baby's ceremony. Now, the idea behind this then is that mum and dad, in our case, or whoever the parents are, would light the first candle for baby, and then in our ceremony, we're going to get 2 other people who are our guide parents to come and light the 2 other wicks after we've lit our first one. If you have a long burning candle, you could light it every year with the other people that were involved in the ceremony as a sort of way to check in on the child and check their progress annually. The candle ceremony can happen at the same time as, say, your guide parents state their promises to the child. This moves away a little from the kind of godparent idea that you have in a religious ceremony, where the godparents will come forward and they'll basically listen to a statement and say, "we will," or "I will," and then they go and sit back down. This is a really more involving ceremony where those guide parents get to come to the front, they state their promises, they light the candle, they are there for a few minutes at the front, and it really feels like you've involved them in the ceremony. I think the idea of then relighting that candle every year is a really lovely way of integrating the guide parents into the child's life for the future and not just at the ceremony. 3. Jiujiu, a Chinese tradition. Whilst I was researching naming ceremonies from around the world, I came across a really interesting idea in China that they do on the baby's first birthday, and it's called Jiujiu. And now the idea behind this is a series of objects are placed in a kind of semicircle or sometimes a full circle around the baby, and then they get the freedom to choose one of those items as part of the ceremony. Whichever item the baby chooses to pick up and play with becomes a life choice that they might make in later life, a job or a creative passion. Now in China, I believe that this choice is taken a little more seriously, but I quite like the idea of having that in ceremonies over here in England, where it's done to involve the child, involve the baby in the ceremony in a really fun way that will be really interactive to your guests. The wording in this section could be quite light-hearted, and I kind of think something along the lines of, this part of the ceremony is going to be all about Baby X. We've all stated how we would like to support them in their future, but what does baby think? This is a chance for them to visually show us what they'd like to do with their future, even if they can't quite tell us yet. You could maybe include the meaning of all of the objects that they pick up on a card that sits on everybody's seat that attends the ceremony. That way everyone will be really involved and they'll be thinking, oh, I wonder which one they're going to get. Be really inclusive, really involving, and a lot of fun. 4. Baby foot and hand printing ritual. Now again, this is another child-focused activity where everybody will be looking at them, and there'll be some great photo opportunities from this. There's a lot of kits out there to make moulds of babies' hands and babies' feet, but a lot of them take quite a lot of prep, and I think there's too much to go wrong for it to be included in the actual naming ceremony. There's something that are great to do, but I just think you need something that's really quick, really easy, mess-free, and something that will not break the flow of the ceremony too much. So I've managed to find a set that claims to be mess-free from John Lewis. So I'm going to have a little experiment with this first, but you basically end up with a photo in the middle and then a handprint and a footprint either side. And all they give you for this is a little pad like this, and the top side of it doesn't get you messy. All of the ink's underneath, so you'll basically press baby's foot and then baby's hand onto this pad in two different places onto the card, and it should be really quick, it should be really easy, and it should be mess free. So how I'd like to use this in the ceremony is to have the parent or parents with the baby standing behind a table facing out to the audience, and then it's going to be a kind of signing of the register like you'd have at a wedding, but this time with a baby's hand and foot instead. So the words that you might use in this part of the ceremony are something like this. To commemorate the naming of Baby X today, we're going to get them to sign this certificate in the only way that they currently know how. Keep it light, keep it fun, and I think that'll be a really nice keepsake. You could even, if you wanted to, get people to sign around what they print, so it becomes a real moment from the day. After the event, you end up with a really nice piece that you can hang on your wall to remember the day. Number 5, tree planting. This is a really lovely idea where a tree is actually planted during the ceremony. The easiest way to do this is to buy a tree that you can transplant from a smaller pot to a larger pot, including some earth from maybe a special location to you, with a view to planting the main tree maybe in your garden at a later date after the ceremony. If you're having the ceremony in your garden anyway, then you could maybe plant it straight into the ground. Whichever way you do it, it's the symbolism of the tree planting that is the most important thing. Again, like all symbolic actions, you can include grandparents, friends, guide parents, whoever you want. But typically it would be mum and dad or mum and mum or whoever the parents are. They would be actually repotting the plant while still holding baby. The symbolism of this is that as the tree grows, as the tree flourishes, baby grows and flourishes. As the tree encounters difficulties such as a cold winter or torrential rain, they overcome those, they adapt, just like the baby will as they grow up into an adult and encounter difficulties in their lives. The wording that you use in this section of the ceremony can really represent your own beliefs and your own wishes for your child. And the type of tree that you choose is really important as well, because each type of tree has got a different symbolic meaning to it. For example, an oak represents courage and strength of character. A birch represents new beginnings. A willow represents inner wisdom and open-mindedness. I'll include a few more examples in the description below so that you can choose the right tree for your own belief system. So there you go, a few ideas to start planning a really modern naming ceremony for your child. I hope you found this useful. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments and I'll answer each one in turn. Happy planning, parents!